Hello everyone, welcome along to the Timeform weekend preview. 2 days to try and condense into this particular preview because we've got the Cheltenham, what do you call this now?
I think it's the November meeting.
November meeting, yeah. When was the open meeting? Was it? That's what this
was the open meeting. I think it's in the era of rebranding, it's now the November meeting.
So we're going to try and gallop our way through 2 cards for the price of 1. Because of course both days are on ITV. So we start on the Saturday and we start with a novice chase, and an interesting novice chase against horses who are already up and running over fences this season. The Wells End and Manila Awards, what do we know about them so far?
Yeah, it was very early in their chasing careers. They're up against horses who've got lots of experience in theatre territory and Ibis de Ray, but I'd be a bit disappointed if one of these 2 couldn't go and beat them, improve past them. I think I'd keep it fairly simple. I know he's odds on, but the World's End, he was the best of these over hurdles. I think he likes top of the ground, which it is at the minute. And he was very good at Chepstow, and I wouldn't be opposing him, even though you could make a case that Manila is about 4 times the price and he's shaped very well at Aintree, but the World's End for me.
Is the Wells End a horse who could get to the top as a novice chaser?
Well, yeah, I think that was the fact they kept him over hurdles probably shows how highly they regard. They thought they had a stay as hurdle horse, so they just kept they probably should have sent him chasing straight away. But he was sort of just below the very top over hurdles, and I think if he'd have ever had his completely right conditions last year, he might have been able to post a big figure. So yeah, he's definitely got Grade 1 potential, and as things stand at the minute, he's the most interesting in that field.
So then we come to the 150, which is a bit of a marathon by Cheltenham standards. This is the 3 3 handicap. We've got a horse in here, so we're recording this on Friday afternoon, and about an hour ago, the young master just won already at Cheltenham, tipped up on it. Yeah,
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
For tomorrow's race.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing about him is that if, on the outside chance, he does turn up, from a handicapping perspective, he's still an interesting radar horse.
Oh yeah, I mean, look, he's been in a lull for the last couple of years for whatever reason, and they just seems to have, whether it was a physical issue or whatever, they seem to have sorted him out, and he seems right back to his best. He obviously won at Chepstow, and he came out today, and although he was left clear in an instant 2 out, I think he'd have won easily anyway. There was lots left at the death, and he dropped so far down the weights. There should still be races to win with him, and it may even be tomorrow because he escapes a penalty for that race there, but they might keep the powder dry for the big race at Newbury if he gets in there, what used to be the Hennessy, then now the Ladbrokes Trophy. I imagine he'd still be sort of in with a chance in that, but were he to turn up here, even with just a 24-hour turnaround, clearly one to be respected.
Yeah.
But we're presuming he's not going to run.
Yeah, that's the assumption. And besides him, we've got a collection of sort of the usual suspects as far as these sort of races go, none more so than Single Farm Payment, who obviously has been to Cheltenham loads of times and is probably going to go off favourite. Is he the sort of horse who you think can convert one of those seconds into first, or would you always be a bit wary of him?
Yeah, sometimes you get these horses and it's probably a bit hard to crown because the type of race he's running in, they're hard to win, and he's not really spatted out too many times or anything like that. But I still think I would be prepared to take him on because I think it's okay, we've just tipped up a short price favourite. I think there's actually plenty of value to be found in this race, and I'll be going for a couple of sort of double figure prices against the sort of likely favourites who, they're all likeable horses. Callot Mads is a bit similar to Single File Payment. You keep thinking he must be able to win one of these over off his mark, given what he did over hurdles last year. But I just think they've had a few chances, and I'd actually be the rarity of picking a Northern Raider going down south, and that's looking well at Nicky Richards. Stable's in really good form. Brian Hughes booked on him, and yeah, certain bits of form last year. He's unexposed over a sort of marathon trip. And although he ran out when he was going to win at Musselburgh, which shows there might be the odd temperament kink, he's pretty consistent, and he's certainly overpriced at about 14, 16 to 1. And he would be my main fancy in this. And the other one to mention is actually last year's winner, Perfect Candidates. He was actually running off a lower mark than he did last year. Were there to be any rain, brings out stamina more, that would suit him down to the ground. And he's a bit forgotten. He's 20 to 1, and the horse he beat in last year's race, Vicenti's, under half those odds. Sure, you've got to forgive him a few bad runs since winning this race last year, but he had a prep run at the meeting last month that'll put him right for this, and the stable's going well, and I'm surprised he's 20 to 1. I don't think he'll go off that on the day.
So that's interesting couple of outsiders. And this is a race which features a former Gold Cup winner in Cornigree, of course, and he's carrying top weight and pushing the rest down the handicap. And that's almost the feature of the Bet Victor Gold Cup as well, because we've got Fraud on off a big mark, which means that only 3 others are carrying above 11 stone, and one of those around 11 stone, which it probably helps in the sense that he doesn't have to carry a big weight, is this Rather Be, who's one of Timeform's horses to follow for the season, and a few people have said that it's this specific race which really floats the boat with him. So just spell out his credentials and what sets him apart from a few of these in here.
Well, I know you're a big fan of him, but look, these kind of races, they're often won by second season chasers because it's ordinarily it's the sort of first chance for these type of horses to run in a race like this. He's actually got proven handicap form. And I just think the type of race should just draw out the best in him. He won a big handicap hurdle in his hurdling days, and he came so close to winning the novice handicap at the festival last year, and he was just pipped by Mr. Whittaker, who he meets again here, but on considerably better terms.
£9 for a head.
Yeah, because obviously Mr. Whittaker's come out once since and gets a penalty for that. So I just think there are probably a couple who, as things stand at the minute, you could argue a better handicap than him, but the demands of this race, with such a big field, it usually pays to be handy, and you can just see Rather Be, touch wood, he jumps well normally. He's got 1 unseat in his record over fences, which was a very, very soft incident. Normally he's been very good over both hurdles and fences in the jumping department. Travels smoothly, and you can just be sitting in the first third of the field and getting an untroubled passage, whereas some of those who are probably, as things stand, got maybe even a similar or better chance on the ratings, their running style, they're normally held up, and they're going to need looking running to get through. So I mentioned horses like Calandra and Benatar, who I've been really waiting to sort of see in a race like this, and I think they've both got strong chances, and I probably will end up backing one of them as well. But Rather Be, with a clear passage, I just cannot see him being out of the frame, and he's favourite at the minute, and I wouldn't be surprised if the sort of price is pushed out a bit in the morning, and you might be able to get a decent each way price. I mean, you know, his solidness is reflected in his price, if you like, but he deserves to be favourite in my opinion.
So those horses, Benatar, Calandra and Rather Be, all second season chasers, which is the sort of profile that you look for in these sort of high value handicaps at the start of the season. Rather Be's just completed 3 chases, so he's still an open book. But just tell us why, from a facts and figures, weights and measures point of view, Calandra is actually Timeform top rated going into this. Is that based on Galway and what he might have achieved?
Yes, there's a bit of that. I mean, it's to do with, that wasn't one isolated incident. I mean, he was running in graded novices last year and
tanking through.
Yeah, he was, absolutely. The way he travels like a horse who almost like should be rated higher, if that makes sense. And he ran in the Silver Trophy at Cheltenham at the end of last season, and he paid for making a real rapid move through, but he almost shaped like the best handicapped horse that day. And at Galway, I mean, look, Galway, you think he fell at the second last, and that's a long way out of Galway, as you know, but, you know, even a conservative estimate where he would have finished, means he's been left alone his handicap mark for this, and he'd have been finishing amongst graded horses like Sublieutenant. He may well have beaten, but even if you say he would have finished 5-6 lengths second to him, he's still coming out with a really good chance at the weights. So a bigger fear for me is the fact he's normally held up, and he's probably going to need a bit of looking running coming through the field. I'm not saying hold up horses can't win this race. Obviously John Spirits did, but in recently, but it can be a disadvantage because you just get sort of horses making mistakes in front of you, and hopefully Rather Be will get an untroubled passage.
Strikes me as the sort of race that we talked about, the 3 mile 3 handicap earlier, that the value is maybe towards the outside of the market. This looks like the value is at the top end of the market, in the sense of all of those horses who we've mentioned at the top of the market, they do stand out from the others, don't they, in terms of...
They do. Look, I mean, if you think back to, there have been recent winners in this race where, I mean, Splash of Ginge, who runs again, was a surprise winner last year. Anacotti was quite a big price winner. And these are seemingly exposed horses who've just dropped back down the weights a bit and have been able to cause a shock. But I think this is a stronger renewal than last year's. I'd be surprised if that type of profile horse was able to win. As I say, there's about 5 or 6 up-and-comers, and at least 1 or 2 of them is going to sort of improve for the type of race, and I think one of those will win. And as I say, I'd be surprised if famous last words, I'd be surprised if an outsider wins this one.
So you mentioned that Splash of Ginge had a track record in this race, and often Cheltenham form can be helpful. We've got a listed staying handicap hurdle?
Yeah, handicap hurdle.
Listed staying handicap hurdle. There is a horse here who seems to come back time and again. Unfashionable stable, but he's a horse with a track record.
Anteros, yeah, he's top rated, and I should stress he's got a Timeform squiggle next to it, and that would ordinarily put off most people. And he deserves a squiggle. He is inconsistent. You know, his record is pretty in and out. But if he just centred solely on Cheltenham, it's not in and out at all. There's very, very few bad efforts at Cheltenham. And since very early in his career, he's been sort of causing shocks at this track and sort of outperforming his odds. And he's won this race 2 years ago. He was a really good second last year. Any rain you might get will only enhance his chance. And this is a pretty poor race for the money, for the grade. And we know he's fit, and we also know, actually, for all I'm saying he's unreliable, he actually strung a couple of good efforts together this autumn. And Sean Houlihan takes the rider who's very good value for his £5 claim. So if you add that £5 onto his racing, in a week renewal, he's probably the best handicapped runner in here, and he's about 8-9 to 1. So that's the way I go with it. Clearly, there are up-and-comers in first assignment and boyhood who'd be the ones that sort of, you know, wouldn't be surprised at all were they to win. But I just think it's a bad race, and he's got a good record in it, and he's a decent price.
Yeah, he's a decent price. Have you had a look at this 330?
Yes. Now, unlike the race we've just been on about, which is really weak for the money, this is a really, really competitive intermediate 2 mile 5. It's the last TV race at Cheltenham on the Saturday, and I wouldn't be wading in strongly on this one because there's so many you can make a case for. I know a couple of the guys are very keen on Speedo Boy, who was a very useful flat horse.
Yeah.
And he'll be a short price favourite on the back of that. And look, I kind of wouldn't put anyone off backing him, but he does have a slightly disappointing last run over hurdles to sort of recover from. And in the context of a race like this, you know, that would sort of slightly put me off. I probably would go, if I was having a bet, it would either be on West End Story of Philip Hobbs, who was in really good form last season when most of his stablemates weren't. So even if he just sort of runs to last season's form, he's in with a squeak here. But if he shows the improvement some of his stablemates have shown this autumn, then he'll have a strong chance. And point of principle of Tim Vaughan's ran in a very strong race in the Silver Trophy at Chepstow last time, and there's been a fair few who finished behind him that they've come out and won since. And he looks, whether it's unfashionable connections or not, he looks at a bigger price than I thought he might be in this. So West End Story or point of principle with the way I go in that.
Yeah, it's not being critical of Speedo Boy. It's just not the sort of race where you'd expect a 3-1 favourite.
Yeah, I mean, the case is there from the flat form. He's potentially chucked in on his flat form, isn't he? But he does have a below par run to sort of recover from.
I just mentioned briefly the ITV races at Lingfield on Saturday. We've got the Churchill Stakes featuring Adayab, who's got a few question marks to answer. Trip, surface, his way in after sort of unravelling towards the end of the season. I thought the Scarlet Dragon was an interesting horse, given that he ran really well in his one all-weather start, and that he ran a huge race sort of under the radar when he was third behind the dead heaters, Moradar and Young Master at Newbury last time. And then the Golden Roses, last year's winner, Gifted Master, is coming in again, probably coming in hot, but he's a one-dimensional horse who's drawn wide in stall 10, and if he gets any competition for the lead, it might upset his rhythm. And I thought that Intisab, who was fourth in the race last year, would have been second, might have challenged Gifted Master had he got going a bit sooner. He's coming in fresh and on the back of a personal best at the Curragh last time, and just the dimensions of the race might just suit Intisab a bit more. So that's just a word on the ITV races at Lingfield. Moving on to Cheltenham on Sunday, Defi Desoy and Clayman Taken Forgan for amongst the headline acts in the Arkle trial. Yeah,
it's always a good race. To be honest, this is boring old cliche. This is one to watch really, because there's too many unknown quantities. If you're desperate to have a bet in it, I would go for Clayman Taken Forgan because he's a horse I like. He fits the profile of a horse who would win this race. And although his run at Utoxeter was it was a bit of a messy gallop, I like the way he jumped once they really sort of pressed on. Often shows sort of when they're put under pressure, and his jumping was good. So yeah, if you're desperate to have a bet in it, but he is favourite because he's proven over fences.
Just the other thing about Utoxeter was that I think we're all a bit after he did that, but we might be underestimating Chesterfield a little bit.
Oh yeah, no, it's some of these small fields. I often say to you in Ireland, you get to the festival and you say, some of these Irish horses have been in small field graded races. It's the racing against good horses. At some stage in those races, they're having a match strides against graded performers and sort of show their mettle. So, it was it's representative form, and Chesterfield's come out and run okay in a good race at Carlisle. So I wouldn't crab the form as such, and he jumped okay. As I say, it's just that there's 2 or 3 interesting horses making their chasing debut, and as I say, he is really one to watch. But if you wanted to bet, he'd be the one to go for.
Saw Royal running this last year.
Crumbs. He did run at Cheltenham. I can't remember which meeting it was. He got pipped by a horse at the October meeting, but I can't remember if he ran this. He probably should have.
Yeah, he should have researched that. But the reason I mentioned So Royal, obviously, is that he's favourite for the Schlur Chase, the feature race on the Sunday, 2-mile race. You could say there's no big guns in here, but obviously the big guns are few and far between and speak for themselves. So this is really sort of the best of the rest, and it is a worthy race, given those involved. Did Sir Royal had to skip the festivals in the spring?
He had an injury, yeah. So he was. If you think about it, he was in the mix in the betting with Footpad and Al in the Arkle, and then I think he was third favourite and dropped out. So he's a very likely. He was just below the absolute top grade over hurdles, but you could have said the same about Footpad, couldn't you? And they sort of flourished once they went chasing, and he's my idea of the winner here. I guess you say it's never great when they've had to sit out through an injury, but he's got a verdict over Brain Power already, and you can. I mean, there's some other likeable horses. I mean, strictly on form, Sizing Granite has got a couple of performances where he should be on the mix on the ratings, but it's just hard to predict which Sizing Granite's going to show up. So, no, of these, I'm actually very confident on So Royal. He should get a race run to suit, and he just looks so professional throughout, and I wouldn't put anyone off him. Yeah.
Brain Power's had a wind up, hasn't he? He's a hard horse to love, isn't he, Brain Power?
Yes, again, it might just be the fact that you just see he's had a few short price reverses, and you know, you sort of think badly of him. He's probably not done all that much wrong, really. And I say he was runner-up in the Arkle in the end, picked up an element of picking up the pieces, but he's just had the odd unlucky non-completion as well. So no, I mean, So Royal had the measure in when he went at Sandown in the big race last year. So.
All right, so the prices as we speak on Friday are about 6-4 Sir Royal, 11-4 Brain Power. That reflects where they were as novices, their relationship.
Yeah. I mean, I think Brain Power's getting a £3 pull, but I still, you know, if Sir Royal's fitting well, he should win.
So Brain Power obviously trained by Nicky Henderson, who's got the favour for the Great Wood. No ordinary horse in Verdana Blue, because things have really clicked with her this season. Won the Elite last week. So is she well handicapped for this then on the back?
Yeah, she's got. Well, she does pick up a penalty for that, so she'd have been better handicapped if she'd not run in that race. But and that really is the thing. It's there's not much juice in that price.
Yeah.
And there are better handicapped horses now. She's clearly absolutely thriving, and she's all about speed. I guess some people have slight concerns about the track. I mean, she ran okay in the Dawn Run Mares Novice at the festival. I think that's the only time I can remember running there before. But she did. She then got beaten at the April meeting, so she's yet to win at the track. And given she's so speedy, that might be an issue. And it's just such a hot race, and I think there probably is better value elsewhere. For all the fact she's thriving, there's no value in that price for me.
Yeah, but it's no surprise that she's looked really good at Kempton and Wincanton this year, because those tracks play to her
exactly.
strengths.
I mean, if you think back to in last year's Betfair Hurdle, she absolutely tanked through it till about 2 out, and okay, it was rain softened ground, and so there were excuses for not lasting home, but it wouldn't be the biggest surprise if something similar happened.
So outside of her, who appeals?
Bit? I mean, we're saying that there are competitive races across. This is probably the hottest of the whole weekend. And when I'm looking like that, I just thought go for a chance it with a sort of an unexposed outsider. And the two I liked in terms of the unexposed categories, Nube Negra of Dan Skelton's. It's the only horse in the lineup with a P as things stand. And clearly, you know, they'll have earmarked this race. It ran a good race in the Fred Winter over this course and distance last year, and I could certainly see it being in the mix, but it's a bit shorter than the other one I fancy, which is Alan King's Novice.
Oh yeah.
Rarity of a novice in this race. It's Dayran de Carjac, excuse the pronunciation.
Dayran de Car Crash.
And they've been pretty patient with it so far, you know, from bumpers. I think I just had two runs in novice seasons hurdles last season. Won a novice at Warwick in the spring, put him away, and it came out and ran shaped well behind Pim at Chepstow. And I just think it's it's all been about the future with him so far, and now all of a sudden, for its handicap day, it's bang, it's in this race. And I just thought that might be the way to go. It's like completely untapped potential. There's a chance that the race that might just be too much for in his career, so early on. But I just thought it's good each way price, and you can get some each way terms to 5th and 6th nowadays, and I'd rather go with a horse like that than perhaps 7-2.
No, definitely, yeah. About the building blocks, and you've got to put some faith in Alan King, but that's not a bad place to put your faith, because he's usually good at identifying the right fits.
Indeed, and he won this race last year, yeah, and I think he had 1st and 4th in this race last year.
Who was last year? Was it Elgin?
Elgin, yeah. So it's, I mean, he's good with these type of horses, and I just think it's interesting that he's clearly wanted to run him in this if he could get in, and just a good each way price. Anything
else on the Sunday?
I think just the last race of the Sharp Novice Hurdle, is it? I suppose we should say Seddon, as he's normally presenting this. It's favourite. Doesn't strike me as a great early season novice for a graded race, and I'd go with him if you wanted to bet in that.
Yeah, that Champion Bumper's already working out from last season. Was he close up, or he was midfield or something?
He was in the field.
A lot of them. So hopefully that gives you some sort of steer and some sort of guide. If you had to pick one out of all those we talked about.
Well, to be honest, provided the young master doesn't run, I think I'd be going in looking well. That's a big price, because I just think I think the favourites are worth taking on in that race, and either him or Perfect Candidate. I think that's the best bet anyway.
And what a shame that Dan Barber isn't sat here, because we could have ended with Nicky Richards himself explaining the virtues of looking well. So that's our gallop through the weekend. Good luck with whatever you're betting, and we'll see you next week.